Hello, Bears fans. Welcome to a brand new edition of Bears on Tap. I am Ron Luce, joined by the boys Juice and Q today, and we are back. Saw a lot of us this weekend, especially these two beauties that I'm joined by today. But we're going to talk a little NFL draft recap. But before we get into all things X's and O's, gentlemen, how are you guys doing on this rainy, at least in the Chicagoland area, Sunday? I don't know how it is for you where you are, Q, but how are you guys doing today?
It's beautiful where I'm at in Austin. We had the rain heavy on Friday, so I think we just got it a little before you guys. But I'm doing wonderful. You guys don't tune in to hear about the weather, especially not in Texas. You tune in to hear about the Bears. So I love this draft class. I'm ready to talk about it, and I'm excited for what the Bears have going on in the future.
Heck yeah, man. Juice, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. It was fun to get on with Q and talk the second rounders, and obviously we did that whole first round stuff, and I got to play some golf yesterday, so that was nice. It rained on and off, so it was tough conditions to play our tournament that we had to play, but still was fun. But excited to dive into the picks as well.
Indeed, diving in. I think this is probably the most fun part of the draft because now it's no longer speculating who they're going to take. It's all right. We know who they got. Where do these guys fit? And I think that's exactly what all of us are itching to talk about. So, gentlemen, why don't we just dive right in? Obviously, we were on the microphone on Thursday night as the Bears selected their first pick of the draft, the offensive tackle out of Tennessee, who I think we were all in agreement that we're big fans of, and that's the big man, Darnell Wright. Have to figure he is a day one starter immediately at right tackle. But guys, let's refresh everybody for those that weren't able to join us live on Thursday night how we feel about the pick. Q, you want to lead us off?
Yeah. So I mean, I've been since the end of the draft yesterday. I've been trying to toy around with how I'm going to grade these picks, and I've been setting up a system. And right now, I mean, where I have the system set up to, it's given the pick a C+, which the toughest thing with this is the top of the draft. So it's all based on the draft value charts, right? I'm using 4 different draft value charts to try to make this grade. And each pick, the difference between each pick is just so wide that it's like, okay, a C+ makes sense there, I guess, because yeah, there might have been better talent on the board. And Darnell Wright hit the Bears' biggest need, which is something I'm accounting for too. But I think that I'll take a C+ at 9 according to these numbers. I think the pick's a solid B because I'm sitting here saying, Christian Gonzalez hard to pass on. Jalen Carter, I mean, technically he passed on him. That's tough to pass on. A few other guys, but ultimately Darnell Wright was the most clear-cut fit for the Bears, and I'm just excited about it. I mean, I think it was CFC Bears tweet out yesterday that it was just like a 2-minute clip of him putting people in the dirt. Like, it's just beautiful. You'd love to see it. You'd love to see that nastiness. He's going to be a tone setter for the Bears' offensive line, a tone setter for their offense. And really, that pick told us what they were going to do the rest of this draft. Mm-hmm. In hindsight, they went after physical football players who are going to set a tone from the start of the game to the last whistle. And that's exactly what Darnell Wright is. That's what this draft class is, and I'm excited about it.
Heck yeah, Juice. What do you think again about the Darnell Wright pick?
I almost laughed a little bit when Q said set the tone. I thought of our buddy NWI Steve over there on the south side talking about setting the tone for baseball. But no, I think too when you look at this pick, you have to put in the compensation that came with the trade as well too. You're getting an extra pick next year. You're also getting DJ Moore at the top of the draft. So essentially, your number one pick was DJ Moore, and then you were able to get Darnell Wright right at 10. So you've shored up 2 parts on your offense that are going to help Justin Fields. I think that's what earlier on in this draft, in terms of the 10th pick, they were able to get a plug and play guy, day one starter with, as Q said, like a mean streak that puts guys in the dirt, and that's what you kind of want to do. You already got that guy on the left side at left guard in Tevin Jenkins, and now on the right side you also have another mean streak, which is Darnell Wright, a guy who is technically sound. And I think that when we look back at this, we'll talk about the fact that maybe you could have taken a chance on Jalen Carter, but getting 2 offensive assets essentially for their first round pick, and then another stab at the board next year with Carolina's pick as well. You got to kind of evaluate the first round with evaluating the trade as well. I mean, I don't think that you can just take it as just the pick, because moving down from the spots that they technically gave up on players, I think that they did a solid job. If you were going to plug and play at the tackle position, it was obvious that he was a day one starter. You don't have to worry about maybe moving him to a guard position, which was Skoronski's knock, and obviously Paris Johnson wasn't on the board at the time, so that looked like the best available for that time.
100%. And agreeing with everything that you guys had to say. Just quickly to add to, got to listen to some Chicago, local sports radio on Friday. As I was getting ready for what ended up being my weekend. I had a wedding, so that's why nobody else saw me the rest of the weekend. But getting just to hear Darnell Wright talk to the media, and his just excitement, and he seems very humble, and he's not a guy that seems like a clown. Seems like he's a good fit for the culture that they're trying to build. But then just the responses he had to some of the questions, right? Like, he was talking about like him wanting to set the tone in a previous interview. And he's like, yeah, I'm there to set the fucking tone, and dropping F-bombs on radio and stuff. And then on top of that, they asked him like, oh, you're bigger guy. Like, what if somebody messaged your quarterback? He's like, oh, we're out in the parking lot with it. And I was like, okay, that's the guy you want on the O-line. You want him going to battle for your quarterback. And again, that nastiness kind of comes out in his personality a little bit. And although he seems like a really cool guy, I actually got to talk to somebody that I know very well that works within the Bears organization. They're not plugged into the front office, unfortunately, but they were actually following Darnell around on Friday, kind of on his media tour, and they said he's awesome, just a super cool, humble guy, and really easy to chat with. So agreed. I think I like the pick. I think we all agreed we like the pick on Thursday night, especially because of what it does for the Bears in terms of not only you getting a good player, but you fill arguably the biggest need on this team, or at least on the side of the ball where you want to see the most improvement because of your hopefully franchise quarterback taking that step forward going into next season. So
look at Ron with the sauces. Ron's got the sauce.
Hey, I was on the phone all week. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Have you heard anything? I was asking that like 15 times. He's like, they were like, I got nothing for you, man. I'm like, I'm trying. Hey, they were like, I want to know too. I don't even know. So, but no, it was cool getting to hear just a little bit, again, somebody that got to hang out with Wright, a little bit on Friday during his media tour, really just hearing that. I think everything that we've kind of gathered from what you've seen in the interviews and stuff is true. It's not just, a face he puts on for the cameras or anything like that. So super, super happy about the first pick. But let's continue talking, because you guys got to be on during this next stretch of picks here and discuss these on Friday night. And it all starts with Gervon Dexter Sr. Out of Florida, the big D tackle taken with that second round selection. Q, back to you here, buddy. What are your thoughts here on the pick?
Yeah, so quick note for everyone out there trying to pronounce his name. It's like a J. Gervon Dexter. Yeah.
Good to know.
So, and I was calling him Gervon Dexter for months before I realized that. But this got a B+ for me. I had Gervon Dexter. I almost just did it myself. Gervon Dexter. He was number 48 on my board. Bears took him at 53. So there's value there for me. I fell in love with this kid's tape. I saw the issues. I saw the issues that everyone else saw. But when you start reading between the lines with them, like the more tape you watch, the more you realize this guy was playing very well despite those issues. And the deeper you get in looking at it, like I saw a tweet from Lester Wilfong the other day that said that he was being asked to match and mirror the offensive lineman, which is probably, unless you're a really strong processor, it's going to impact your get off, right? Because you are not trying to shoot a gap. You're not trying to explode off the football as much as you're trying to read the offensive lineman in front of you and make sure that you are maintaining where you're supposed to be going, the run lanes that you're supposed to be going to, because that defense wants their linebackers to play really free and uninhibited by any blockers. So a big part of his job was to keep the linebackers clean. And so coming off the football, I can see how that might impact pad level too, because he's not focusing on, man, I gotta stay low. I gotta keep this good bend in my knees and keep this leverage point. The main thing he's thinking about, his eyes are looking at the guy in front of him and trying to decipher what that guy's doing so that he can match it, right? So that he can engage and stay where he is supposed to be. So I think that's going to impact the opinion of his tape a lot, realizing that fact. And just once you start thinking about that, you just see a guy who is so dang strong out there and so athletic, and just the sky's the limit for him, I think, as far as being like a two-tech nose tackle. And I think it gets lost in this. And it's something that I said on the stream when the pick happened. This is an ideal player for how the Bears defense is going to react to shifts on offense. I was on Robert Schmidt's podcast on Friday night, and he mentioned something to me that I didn't even realize, that last year, late in the season, teams started to realize the Bears would not shift their D linemen with the offensive shifts, because they did not want to put Justin Jones at the nose and ask Mike Pennell to play 3-tech. It was a no-go for them. So defenses just started torching the Bears with these shifts where they were running straight at the 3-tech, because Justin Jones wasn't shifting into the nose, and it left a wide open gap there.
Yeah.
So Gervon Dexter fixes that. This is a guy who you do not feel bad about shifting into the 3-tech, in my opinion. Do I want him playing there permanently? No. But the fact that Poles said he sees him as interchangeable after he got drafted, that tells me alone that mattered a lot to the Bears coaching staff. And he's one of the only players in this class that I really feel super comfortable with being able to do that, outside of maybe Mozzie Smith and Jalen Carter, who both went in the first round.
High praise.
Keanu Benton might be able to, but I don't think that he's going to be as efficient at 3-tech as a guy like Gervon Dexter might.
Yeah, very high praise. Juice, any additional comments there, buddy?
Yeah, I just think drafting positional need at that point was a win in itself. They need to start building that rotation, and they've invested some money in the free agency at those positions on the defensive line. But now next year, as it seems like, and you kind of lump together a lot of these picks together in terms of the defensive line, they're just trying to find rotational guys for next year too, and guys who can make some noise inside, outside, and then that's where they're going to find their positions that they play. That was a huge problem too, as last year, positional depth in terms of the defensive line. So yeah, just drafting a position of need at that point, I thought was, and not expending draft picks either to move up, I thought in hindsight worked out for them. They could have definitely moved up the board and picked a name that maybe more people were familiar with, but they found a positional depth of need, to place in that pick, and a guy they liked with some versatility. So I think in regards to like talking about coaching them up and getting them to the point where they need to be, we talked about it on that stream, Q, that they should be able to do that. They feel confident in the coaching staff to teach him how to play with the correct pad level and how to push the pocket more consistently. But like you said, if they were asking him to do something he's not comfortable with, or to mirror and was affecting get off time too, they definitely saw something within the process of the scouting team that they can definitely use in the future. And hopefully he ends up being a starter at this position, because if that's the case, then you're kind of playing with some house money, right? Because down the line, going into next year, they're going to have plenty of opportunities, cracks at the piñata, bites the apple, whatever you want to call it, to get the guy, that could play next to a couple of the guys that they drafted. And they'll have the position or the free agency money to do that as well. If they feel like there's a veteran out there that can fit with these guys that they've drafted. But I liked it. I thought the move made sense there. And I think it kind of speaks volumes that some of the guys that we were talking about in the pre-draft shows, guys we liked, they fell fairly far after, passed over by very many teams in terms of, you talk about Atabare and guys that were linked to them. They were on the board for a long time. And I think that just kind of shows that, they didn't make a mistake just because, they liked the player, or, they were able to throw out some smoke screens and things like that, maybe kind of dictated the board the way they liked it. And I think that's, a GM move that sometimes we haven't seen. Moving back, I thought too, like, just to quickly go back, moving back the one pick, if they weren't going to take Jalen Carter, and just having another fourth rounder. These are these GM moves that, and didn't much. We didn't get the one extra pick for essentially nothing. That's I think that's the writing on the wall for these picks, and I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the Gervon Dexter pick initially, when it happened, I feel like I could already, like, how there's always, like, when you feel like something traumatic happens and you're like, oh my God. Like, I think I felt that, like, go through the minds of Bears fans, even though I was nowhere near any Bears fans, right? Like, you see it and everybody's probably like, who's this guy? Why are they taking him? But again, it's one of those, once you dive in, you understand some of the context clues, like you alluded to there, Q. And I saw that tweet as well, and your response to it, and it puts your vision of the player in a lot different light once you know some of that information. So I think, again, to your guys' point, we knew in this draft they were going to invest in the trenches, and they did that with the first two picks. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I'm really intrigued to see kind of where Gervon fits just in the rotation. Is he going to start right away? Is he going to maybe come off the bench in year one with a guy like Billings who can play that one technique in the 4-3? So that kind of will be interesting, I think, to see with him. But he's a big dude. He's a big dude, and we like big dudes, big hogs on the defensive line, especially on the inside. Moving ahead, gentlemen, to their second round pick. They actually moved up for this selection with Jacksonville, ultimately traded what was, I believe, a fifth rounder to get up there, and then they ended up moving back into the fifth round because Ryan Poles in day 3 trades is just what he does. But nonetheless, they moved up and took the corner out of Miami, Tyrique Stevenson, and everything that I had read on him prior to the draft. Again, I think a guy that a lot of people saw high value in. So with that in mind, Q, what you think, man?
Yeah, I think Ryan Poles effectively terrified every New York Giants fan on earth, jumping up in front of them when they wanted John Michael Schmitz, and they got John Michael Schmitz. But I think all of us thought that this pick was probably going to be John Michael Schmitz, and it wasn't. So Tyrique Stevenson, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I think that Poles made this move to jump up in front of Dallas, who was picking 2 picks later, and the Giants probably just weren't willing to deal because they wanted John Michael Schmitz. But Tyrique Stevenson is a corner that I like a lot for what the Bears defense does. I think that he's a little bit scheme specific of a player in that his agility really isn't that great. He can't cut and turn, but in a cover 2, cover 3 defense, he's a really strong fit. Like, because in cover 2, your corners are being asked to play, the 10 yards down to the flat, right? Or your outside corners at least. And the cover 3, they're playing a deep third of the field. They're not being asked to take a crosser man coverage across the middle of the field or to hit that. They're just really being asked to play that vertical line, that vertical stretch there behind them in the cover 3. So Tyrique Stevenson is a strong fit for that. Big, long player. And one thing that I actually want to correct from when me and Juice were talking about it. So I'm taking Robert Schmitz's word on this because he watched a lot more corners than I did. I only watched like 2 games of Tyrique Stevenson. I think he watched like 4. And I thought he wasn't that great on pattern matching stuff. But I'm also, corner's one of my weakest spots. Robert was telling me that he thinks Tyrique Stevenson is really good on the pattern matching stuff and anticipating routes. So I'm going to take his word for it on that because, like I said, he knows it better than I do. Now, the other thing that I just love about Tyrique Stevenson is a really good thing for what Eberflus does on defense. He is just so aggressive downhill. Like his his trigger is just so quick, just boom, explosive downhill, physical tackler, which Eberflus, not just Eberflus, anyone who's a cover two disciple, being a physical tackler at the cornerback position is a must. I mean, that you need that because you're not stacking up the edges and the outside the box. If anything, you're going lighter on the box there. And you need those corners to be able to fill in run lanes and be able to play physical downhill football. That's what Tyreek Stevenson is, a physical downhill football player.
Yeah, 100%. Juice?
Yeah, I think when we were talking about this, when we talked too about maybe this is a pick that you get him on the outside and you're able to move Kyler inside and vice versa. Maybe you get better by making this pick and you get better in two positions by doing that. I think that when you look at it, and I watched some of his stuff after, yeah, you're right, Q. There's a lot to be excited about. Coming down into the box, making tackles, seems to be really physical. And it seems like the Bears are going to have two guys on the outside that like to hand fight, like to play up on the line of scrimmage, can do that, and tackle, come up. I like the pick. And I think that if you can get better at two positions by doing this, that's where the win's at. You're able to shore up the outside and the inside. And I was a huge fan of what they did for the first two picks here.
Just what you just said, sorry, just that just made me realize something. This is one of the first times in memory where the Bears have two physical press cornerbacks on the outside. Nathan Vasher was the off corner. Charles Tillman was on. Even Tim Jennings was more the off guy. Kyle Fuller always liked to play off while Prince played up in their face. They're gonna put a lot of stress on their safeties, and that's probably what they want to do. They're probably sitting there saying, "We got Bojack and Brisker. These guys are dudes. We're gonna put pressure on them." And we're going to have our corners get physical with receivers and jam the hell out of them. And we're trusting those guys. We're trusting Tremaine Edmonds too, because Tremaine Edmonds is probably playing that deep middle, I assume. I mean, I don't know in Eberflus's defense. I think you want that length for the deep middle. That's cool to see. I love the physical press style. So that's fun.
And maybe that helps the defensive line in some aspects too, being physical on the outside, getting them more chance to get to the quarterback. If you're not having those elite pass rushers, you're not needing that win time so quickly, because if you're jamming at the front, you're buying extra time. So I think that kind of helps too. And like you said, you have two linebackers that are very knowledgeable and know the scheme and are going to be running from side to side and clogging the holes too. So yeah, maybe that's how you win next year without putting as much asset value into the defensive line. Is you do it on the outsides, you do it with the linebackers like they did in free agency, and you just let your all pro safeties just be all pros. So I think that's maybe how Flus is looking at this as he goes into next year, with the hope that the year after, with some draft capital and with some extra money capital, that they can find that elite pass rusher eventually.
Yeah. Echo everything that you guys had to say, right? Football is a game of timing. And as soon as you disrupt the route pattern of a receiver, it frees up Bojack and Brisker to be playmakers as well, right? You give them that ability to be the ball hawks that you want on that back end. Maybe we got to see a little bit of it last year, right? Bojack looked like Bojack again because he was able to be that playmaking safety. Brisker was the same way, making a lot of plays in different manners, not necessarily via the takeaway via interception, but being a physical player kind of at that strong side spot. You're going to see a lot more of that. And Brisker's going to take another step forward in his development, I think, this year after already being a stud of a player last year. Yeah, you shore up your back five effectively, right? That's kind of just the way football's going. Is it's a lot of you're playing a lot of with nickel corners and things like that. You're playing a lot of 5 DBs. Now you've got a chance, right, to give some of those. They've got some guys, right? Maybe they're not the greatest, the biggest names in terms of the pass rush, but again, a little bit of timing disrupted. You fluster the quarterback a little bit. He double pumps a couple more times than he would. And all of a sudden you might have a coverage sack. And that's hopefully good enough. And when they do try to force things, maybe that gives your big play safeties an opportunity to go get it. So agree. I like the pick. Immediately liked it when I saw it as the selection. I know he had been very hyped and a lot of people liked him. Not just, within us here at Bears on Tap. I like big corners. Big corners are fun. So I am also very excited. And Hugh, great observation, because I was actually thinking the same thing. I was like, when is the last time the Bears had two big press corners? Like I don't ever remember a time, because like you said, right? Peanut was the play up on the line guy. Vasher was off ball. Jennings was off ball with Peanut. And then with Fuller, it was flip-flop with him and Prince. Like they've never had two that are going to play up and get in the receiver's face. And then you've got, Gordon as the athletic guy that he is, that could play in that nickel spot. So I love what you also said there, Juice, about upgrading at two positions as well, by, getting stronger on the inside as well, being able to flex Gordon in there too. And then guys, with the 3rd round pick, they doubled down on the D line, as we're kind of alluding to here. Get better in the secondary helps your D line. Well, they doubled down again. This time they took Zach Pickens out of South Carolina, big 6'4", 291 defensive tackle. To me, guys, profiles more as a 3. But Q, I will give you the floor first, my friend. Thoughts on the pick?
Yeah, so I gave this an A-. I was a big fan of it. And the last one, I didn't say the grade. I gave it a B. Stevenson was number 58 on my board. They took him 56. Zach Pickens was number 56 on my board, and they took him 64. So, I mean, that's an A- to me. That's good value, not, incredible value. Otherwise it'd be an A+, but it's good value, which is all you can really ask for here. I mean, I'm happy with a B, but Pickens, you're probably right. He profiles as more of the 3 technique. But the thing that's really interesting about him is South Carolina. He played a lot of 1 tech, 0 tech even. I mean, he's 290 to 300 pounds. He was 298 at his pro day, but 290 at the combine. Makes me think he's probably playing right around 300 on the dot. I would imagine he's probably a little lighter for his athletic testing at the combine, but he is so powerful for his weight. And I mean, he's not going to sit there and hold up against a double team or anything, but his leverage, his core strength, I think he can shift into the nose when they need to. And again, he, just like with Dexter, Poles said after he was picked, we see both these guys as interchangeable. I don't think they truly see him as interchangeable. They see him as interchangeable when they need to be. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're going to be running plays for Pickens to be the nose tackle. But when that shift happens, he can be the nose tackle. And he's heads up player against the run. Like I'm so impressed by the way he held up against the run at South Carolina, because he shouldn't have. He just shouldn't have been able to, and he did. And both these defensive tackle picks are just really evidence to me that the Bears scouting staff is looking for sleepers in these second, 3rd round picks that weren't used to their max potential. They can get creative with their vision to say, well, these guys weren't playing to what their strengths are. Let's play them to what their strengths are, because they fit our scheme physically. And if they're able to do this against everything that, their profiles say they should be doing, let's see how good they can be when we put them in a scheme that is everything their profile says they should be doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's really sound logic. And I hope it's right. We'll find out. I think it's great logic and a great way to find value at pick number 64, at pick number 53. Where you're not looking at the premium players anymore, but you're trying to find value among starters at this point. Guys who should be starters in the league is that range that you're picking there. But you're hoping you can find guys who are more than just starters by taking that type of view.
Absolutely. Juice?
Yeah, I think when we were talking on this pick, when we were on the stream on Friday, we were talking a lot about how highly recruited he was too, coming out of high school, pardon me, and then went to a system that he didn't play. I think in terms of in terms of this pick, you have to look purely on athleticism and build and hope that, by putting him in this system that fits his attributes better, we can look in the future and go. And I think too, that's the time to take a shot, right? This third round, first there, you'd already kind of shorted it up at least a little bit by picking Dexter earlier on in the second round. So this is the time to take your shot. And they did that. And I think too, like we looked and we talked about his attributes that he has, his quickness, his size. I think this was a good pick at this time because the potential is there. You absolutely see it. And it shows on film too. I think that playing and he did it in a conference too that is not easy to play in. And he was doing it in a scheme that didn't fit him as well either. So he's already shown, the attributes to do things that he's not comfortable with. And now it's all about, like you said, getting him in a system that fits him, fits his body type, and seeing where he ends up. But this third round pick, I feel like that was the time to do that. And they kind of made the safer-ish picks over the course of the first three. And I think this was definitely the time to take the swing after getting a tackle, getting another defensive lineman in a corner. We talked about that those were all positions that they really wanted to shore up. Now it was time to take your home run swing. It's almost like in baseball. It's like runners on, you got to move a guy over. They kind of did that. They had their vegetables per se in the first couple, and then now let's try to have some ice cream with this pick.
I live for the juice metaphors on any.
I have to see now. It's like it's a required thing. Every time I turn a mic on, I have to do it. So this was the one I was gonna make sure that I fit a little metaphor in.
I love it. And also we're getting from the comments too. Sunquil Wooten here says Zach Pickens one gap and going to be an absolute problem. And again, to your guys' point, right? You take the home run swings on guys you think are going to fit here. And we see it time and time again. The best teams in the NFL find value in these third and fourth and fifth rounds to fill out starting spots and develop guys. They might not be home run picks in year one, but who's to say these guys aren't, very valuable players to this team in some form or fashion in years 2, 3, 4. So I like the pick. Again, big guy. As soon as I saw the size, just again, wasn't able to be on with you guys, unfortunately, but immediately my brain said he's a 3, right? Just like with Dexter, he's a 1. But again, hearing Ryan Poles and his boat of confidence saying these guys can play either the A gap or the C, or the B gap, it doesn't matter. That's refreshing knowing that the Bears got torched when they wouldn't shift their line. Now you can shift your line and have a lot more confidence because of the personnel that you're bringing in through the draft. So also big fan of the pick. And love the analysis from both of you guys as well. And then this is when the Bears started to get a little, I don't want to use the term weird, but they started to go a little away from some of the things I think a lot of people thought they were going to do on day 3. Poles is going to Poles. Of course, he, found ways to get more picks. They got the compensatory pick, so they had the 2 7s. He got a 5th rounder back by moving out of that first pick in the 4th round. They ended up trading with the Saints, and with that pick at 115, they took running back out of Texas, and his name is not Bijan, but it was Roschon Johnson with the pick here. He was Bijan's number 2 at Texas. Big physical guy. Q, what do you got on him?
Yeah, I mean, so this pick by my numbers, I gave it a C. So it's one of the lower ones among what the Bears picked in here. But I'm still a fan of the player. I had him 139 on my board. They take him 115. So it was a little bit of a reach. And Roschon is he's a big, mean, physical runner. It fits the traits of what we said about the first 3 guys, right? It's the Bears. I heard a funny way of putting it on I was talking about the Vikings draft class, and the guest I had on for it said that I asked him to put it in a single sentence. What do you think of the Vikings draft class? And he said they're light and small. It's very hit or miss, and just where's the beef? And then I asked him about the Bears draft class, and he said all the beef.
There's the beef.
Like, that's what the Bears got in Roschon Johnson, man. They got all the beef here. He doesn't have the breakaway speed that you want, but he's actually really quick on like the 10-yard split. His quick explosion is very nice. And former quarterback, he's only been playing running back for a few years. He actually committed to Texas as a quarterback. So the reason that's important, he understands pass protection really well for a running back. This is a guy you can probably trust year one to be in pass protection and not goof it all up. Like, he might miss some as a rookie still because the blitz fronts are going to get more exotic, more simulated pressures, that type of stuff. But generally, you feel pretty comfortable with this guy as a rookie running back being in there on passing downs. His route tree is okay. He didn't run anything too complex at Texas, but he can catch well, and there's no reasons to believe that he can't improve on the route tree. So I see him as a passing down running back, but also a short yardage running back, which is a weird combo, right? That's not something you see a lot of, that those two being paired together. So I think putting him in on short third downs is going to be a really interesting thing, because you're going to be able to get some wild play action off it, assuming that he's bowling people over like he should be. And you're going to be able to get him bowling people over on third and short. So, like, I really like the mix for the third and short, second and short type situations that you're in, and the type of games that the offense can start to play because of the player that he is.
100%. Juice?
Yeah, I think this pick, in terms of versatility, is something there too, right? You talked about being able to catch out of the backfield, being a physical runner. I think prior to going in here, we talked about him being somewhat like Monty-like, a guy who could run through, finish, get those extra 3-4 yards. That's needed, right? And like you said, Q2, with finishing runs and finishing against, I like to see him on the outside bowling over corners too, and seeing kind of in the screen game being real physical if they're able to do that. I watched a couple of the highlights via the Bears when they selected him, and there's a lot of people on Twitter who really, really like this pick. Seems like he's going to be a day one guy that they can definitely, count on at least a little bit. Q, you're talking about pass blocking and being, pass protection type guy. That's what gets you on the field, especially as a rookie too. If you're able to do that and you can bypass, some of the learning curve that comes with that, it's just, you're already going to find yourself ahead of the game. And two, I know that they're still searching in terms of, punt returners and kick returners. He did it a little bit at Texas as well too. So that's maybe another area he can contribute is on special teams. I know there's a lot of guys who, they have brought in via the draft this year, or, they still have Velus Jones, that they may see it as that type of guy as well. But build up that running back room, because I feel like that position, you can't have enough versatility at it. And, they really needed that kind of between the tackle type guy too, to go with, Foreman, to go with Herbert. Now it seems like, with Homer too, they're going to have 4 guys that you feel pretty comfortable with them back there making plays. And at least with this pick, I think you look at, maybe there's some people who would say that because he went to school with Bijan Robinson, that there's, less, mileage on him. There's less, exposure to what he could really do, because obviously he wasn't getting the carries that, he probably would if he went to another school. But yeah, absolutely. I think this pick is pretty solid. I know that maybe it was a reach, but if you're gonna take a guy here in the 4th round, I think it's worth it, because there is a lot of upsides in terms of pass protect and his ability to finish some runs inside too. So they're going to find a spot for him, and that's what you're kind of looking for in these later rounds. It's find a guy who can contribute.
Yeah, 100%. And like you guys both said, definitely a well-liked pick, friend of the program and friend of On Tap. I am Skokes says Roschon equals dog. I don't see Foreman and Herbert keeping him as depth for very long. Yeah, I think that's something that's been very kind of set around. And again, going back to the beef comment, you don't need picks to be sexy. The Bears did a good job getting the meat and potato guys, 100%, as Lop says there.
I like a nice steak. I'll say that.
Yeah, all right. I think we all do. But Juice, I'm gonna take a page out of your book here real quick. Here's why I like the pick, and it further builds on everything that Quentin and you just talked about. This Bears running back room now has multiple flavors of ice cream. Because originally you had just three very different types of running backs, in my opinion. You had Khalil Herbert, was clearly the I don't catch the ball out of the backfield. I'm the downhill runner with some breakaway speed. Then you had Travis Homer, who was the clear, I'm a third down back. I can protect, I can catch out of the backfield. And then you had Foreman as I'm the clear, I'm the bulldozer. That's my job. Now, by bringing in Roschon, I'm excited to see how creative Luke Getsy can get now with the backfield at times. Because you go from having a guy now who brings you a little bit of the Foreman attributes, but also brings you some of the Homer attributes. Who's to say on a third down passing down, where when you would think it could be a passing down on 3rd and 3, and you spread the field out, and maybe you got two running backs back there in Homer, or you could effectively put two running backs back there, in a guy like Homer and a guy like Johnson, and three receivers, and say, let's get weird. Let's go for a shot on 1st and 10 and it be a play action. But if you like what you see and they're spread out because they think you're taking the deep shot, go ahead and check out of it and check into a running back screen or a draw or something weird where you can get some of these guys out in space and using that talent level as well. So again, it might not be the prettiest of the running back picks in this draft, but again, I just like the aspect of bringing a little bit of something different to the running back room. And now all four of these running backs kind of fill a need that you would need to get in like an elite all world running back that only come around once in a blue moon. And I think they did a good job getting, again, those different flavors of ice cream in that room for what now Luke Getsy will be able to do on the offensive side of the ball. From there, with the second pick in the 4th round for the Bears, they went another offensive skill position, gentlemen, and they went with a guy who, ironically, when I got to listen to a little part of the draft on Saturday, Daniel Jeremiah comped this guy to his new teammate Darnell Mooney, and it is wide receiver Tyler Scott out of the University of Cincinnati, 5'10", 177. Burner deep downfield was what they said out of him right out the gate. Q, what else do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I really not a ton. I mean, that's really what the guy is, and he's very agile too. There's a lot of upside there to believe that he can unlock. At pick 133, he was 83 on my board. This is an A+ pick. I mean, this is great value, and really he runs very crisp routes, like just very clean, very tidy. Everything is kind of exactly how it's supposed to be. And one thing I talked about with Juice when we were talking about, I think it was just I don't think it was this pick. I think it was just some tight ends or wide receivers were being picked. And it was like, I have a real bias against guys who tend to freelance their routes, tend to just have wasted movement, a lot of stutter steps and jukes leading up to their the stem and their release. And that's not Tyler Scott. Tyler Scott's no nonsense in his routes. And it's one thing I really like about him, that he just gets straight into his route, straight out to do what he's supposed to do. Now, one of the questions with that, didn't face a lot of press coverage, so that's something he's going to have to figure out. At 177 pounds, 6'10", that might be a bit of an issue for him. We'll see. But I prefer a guy who can just say, I'm planting my foot in the ground, I'm running my route. It's just a question of whether he can do that through more contact. But the good news is he doesn't have to do that day one. He's wide receiver 4 on this roster right now, maybe 5. He has time to learn this stuff on this roster. And I think it's really a good pick for that, because the Bears are stacking some depth in the wide receiver room. Wide receiver has become such an important position. Say you lose Claypool next year. I know we all expect Mooney to be back, but say he isn't. Bears have a guy who steps in into whoever's gone shoes next year and hopefully can produce. And that, or not next year, but the year after, not 2023, but 2024.
Sure.
In 2024, you feel good about what you have in Tyler Scott, I believe.
Agreed. Juice?
Yeah, I think when you look at this pick, you look at playmaking ability and speed. If at Cincinnati, he was able to have a lot of big home run plays, big hits. And that's, in the NFL today, that's what you got to do, right? Take the top off of defense. Have guys like that who are on your roster, regardless if you think that they can win at the line or not. It's speed kills. Have as much as you can of it in the NFL. You can get real creative with this kid, I think. This allows another, gadget guy within, Luke Getsy's, wheel of fun toys to maybe play around with and put out there and speed. You can't teach it, right? You talk about his route running ability, Q. If he's able to do that and he has speed, he'll find a way on the field. I think that's the long and short of this. But yeah, I like this pick because as I watch, I see a lot of speed, and that's something that you can't have enough of. And how many times in the past have the Bears, we watched the lack of it on this roster. You look at the wide receiver room for a lot of the years, and it was big, lengthy guys go up and get it. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. But Ron, you talked about the ice cream, the Neapolitan per se, like, again, same kind of pick. You get another different guy inside of that room that could beat you in a different way. It's just a matter of, like, we're going to have to see if he could do it at the, when the bright lights are on in the NFL, and we'll see where that ends up. But you got to look at, his abilities that he already has and say, yeah, all right, I can see it. Now it's just about integrating him into the offense and finding a spot for him and, teaching him up how to win at the line of scrimmage. Because, yeah, you're right, Q. He's going to have to learn how to do that. And it's a big physical league, and little guys like that they have to figure it out.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add to that too. Again, love adding another playmaker, right? Adding depth. I think something we saw at the receiving position last year because of injury was the lack of that depth, right? Mooney went down, Claypool went down. Like, EQ St. Brown and N'Keal Harry were starting games for the Bears last year, receiver. Having a guy like Tyler Scott back there gives you some sense of confidence if a Claypool gets hurt or if a Mooney gets hurt. A guy that can fill in and give you some type of contributions on the field. Love the speed. And to your guys' point, right, he needs to learn how to work through physicality. What better way to do that than learn from a guy who had to do it himself in Darnell Mooney? Same kind of player, smaller, speedster, but he figured it out, and he's been a rather successful NFL wide receiver. Between that, having a league vet and a very good player like DJ Moore in that room, Claypool, and even a guy who is a big physical receiver that can probably teach him some things in St. Brown. That is a good room for him to be in. And again, to your point, Q, he does not need to be the guy year one, but he can be a massive contributor to this team in year two if they are to lose one of Claypool or Mooney or both to free agency, because that's just the nature of the business. So I am also a big fan of the pick, and Q, to hear that you had him ranked so high makes me warm and fuzzy. So we love A+ picks as the draft continues to wear on. But gentlemen, they went ahead then and led off with their first pick in the 5th round. They took a linebacker out of Oregon. It is Noah Sewell. They took the 6'1.5". Don't forget the half linebacker with the pick, 13th pick in the 5th round. Q, what do you have on Mr. Sewell?
So I actually never watched Sewell's tape. Linebackers were one of the positions I ended up skimping on just because of how much the Bears invested in linebacker in the offseason. But I heard my friend Danny Meehan told me that, or not told me, I saw him send something out that said he thinks that Noah Sewell could be an edge rusher. He thinks some of his best reps were as a blitzer, as a rusher off the corner, off the edge. So that's a really interesting idea to me because it's a weird pick, right? You're 3 deep at linebacker already in a league where you really only play 2. You had a few UDFA guys last year who showed some promise outside of Sanborn. You had some other guys who looked like they might be able to do something in this league. And to go linebacker here, it was kind of interesting. but Noah Sewell had a solid 10-yard split at the combine. So I could see maybe he's a blitz package guy or a rush package guy. Shorter arms, so maybe not. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure his hands would need work if you decided to make him an edge rusher. But it was an interesting pick. I generally like the value based on what I've seen on the consensus boards. I mean, consensus, he was number 137 overall. I gave it a B plus here based on the limited stuff that I have around. And I mean, a 5th round pick, I think getting a guy like Sewell, who, his older brother plays over in Detroit, was the number 5 overall pick 2 years ago, or number 4. His 2 uncles both played in the NFL. He has 2 other older brothers who played college football. That means a safe pick to me. Like that, having all that in your family, you know what it takes to be in this league. You know what's expected of you, and you come to work ready to go. I think Sewell's a very safe pick here, and I like it.
Juice?
Yeah, this was the one that kind of was a little head scratcher to me too. I didn't understand. Obviously, Q, you had mentioned that there really wasn't a need for them at this point. That's why when you mentioned that maybe he could play, as a rusher, that's interesting. It's an interesting thought, especially in this part of the draft. You're looking for starters if you can find them, but you're looking for intriguing projects in terms of, when you get this low in the draft. But at least from what I've heard, decent run stopper is a guy that, obviously Q, you alluded to it, knows the NFL way around the NFL because of his family. You're probably bringing in a guy that maybe can contribute at least a little bit on special teams. I think that's when you kind of get to the 5th and the 6th, and you're looking for, at least some guys who, can go out there and maybe contribute on kickoffs or punt coverage and things like that. So I know that maybe that's not the case for him, but maybe they see something in a project that they can move him around and get some value out of this. But this was the one I'm interested to watch, because I really don't know much about what they're going to do with him, because like you said, there just doesn't seem to be a spot for him.
I love what you said, Q, about hearing about him being maybe a pass rusher. And here's why, because the light bulb went off in my head as soon as you said that. Last season, a team that got very good remarks and, applause per se from the NFL as a whole found a really impactful edge rusher in the 6th round of the draft last year that was categorized as a linebacker. And that's the Detroit Lions. They did that with James Houston, who in 7 games racked up 8 sacks. Late round pick, about the same size as Sewell as well, 6'1", 225 versus 6'1", 240. Maybe there is something to that. Maybe they do see that ability to, and again, he's not going to be asked to come in right away and do that. Maybe he's a guy that you can work with him through the first 8-9 weeks of the season and saying, hey, we'll give you some snaps. But if he turns it on and can become a meaningful edge rusher, if nothing else for depth purposes, to me, that's a good pick in the 5th round. You mentioned the pedigree as well, Q. That's always helpful too. Just again, having that example in your family of what it takes to be in the league, it at least gives you the feeling of he's going to come to work and work to get better. And if the worst case scenario, he doesn't pan out, it's not because of a lack of work ethic. So I agree with you. I think safe pick. But as soon as you mentioned edge rusher, the light bulb in my brain went off with James Houston from a year ago for the Detroit Lions. With the 2nd 5th round pick that, again, they got back. They got that in the New Orleans trade when they dropped down. This is where the Bears went ahead and took yet another corner, this time out of Minnesota. It was Terrell Smith. Q, I will hand the floor over to you, my friend.
Yeah, so this was another one that got an A+ mark for me. As you get down into the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, you just get a lot more A+ because you just don't have that many guys graded like below that, But I think I only got 1 game in a Terrell Smith, so I am just barely familiar enough to get myself in trouble with him. But I had him 109 on my board. Consensus was 114. at 165. That sounds like great value. Not just me being, having a crazy grade on a guy, but backed up by the consensus. I feel fairly good about that. He's a big, long cornerback, really good speed, and he can change direction. He had a above average 3-cone time. His shuttle was right at average, and his 40 was a 4.4. So, I mean, this guy's got all the physical tools you look for: long arms, 204 pounds, 6 feet tall. He's prototypical of what you want in this defense. And he plays physically too, like kind of similar to Tyreek Stevenson, where he's a play up on the line of scrimmage, use those physical gifts he has to make life tough on wide receivers, getting out of their release. And he's a good tackler, like we said earlier with Tyreek Stevenson. Being a tackler and willing in the run game is really important for what the Bears want to do. Now, I thought he looked a little clunky at times on tape. Like, I'm not completely sure. I don't recall if he was a position change guy or not. He might have been a safety who became a corner or something. I feel like I remember hearing that at some point. But in his transitions, in his hip turn, he just looked clunky sometimes. Like the footwork just wasn't smooth, and he just it looked unfamiliar to him. And I know that there's something more to this story. I don't know it off the top of my head, but he was like freshman of the year in the Big Ten, I believe, at Minnesota. Back at like four years ago, maybe 5. And then he barely played the next 2 years. Like he barely saw the field. And then 2021, he got to play some more, did all right. 2022, he had a much better year than he did in 2021. And I think there's a lot of up and down kind of assessment on him where people are just kind of in between. But honestly, at this point in the 5th round, but on the athletic upside, the size, and I think that's at the very least, he should be able to be quality depth for you. I'm not sure if he has as much special teams experience, but I imagine that's going to be a spot where he has to kind of be important or be willing at least and be capable. And I mean, athletically, he is capable to help on special teams, to be a gunner, to be out on kick coverage, that type of stuff. But just looks kind of raw sometimes out there at corner. So there's definitely some project here, but the traits to be more than just a project.
I like it. Juice, anything to add?
Speed kills. If you can find it late in the draft, no matter the position, take it, right? I think that's something that, we could definitely look at with this pick. Special teams depth, extra. I mean, how many times have we watched the Bears get down to 5th and 6th at corner on the depth chart? Like, you can never have enough of that. So, yeah, I think in regards to this, you pick the guy that maybe is a project, but like you said, has the attributes to with some coaching up, maybe put in some key snaps down the line if you have an injury or you're able to find him, some value on special teams. But I think that's what you're looking for: projects, these late picks, special teamers, speed, that one attribute that goes, all right, he does this well already. Maybe we could add this and this, and we're getting a steal here. And that's what I think they saw with this guy. It's a guy that can play. It's a guy that, has the attributes, and we'll see where it lines up. But these late ones it's all about just trying to find one good thing that they do and then being like, all right, I think we could fit this into our scheme somehow.
100%. Again, I think the speed, the physicality, the scheme fit is certainly a thing that has to at least settle some confidence, I think, in the hearts of Bears fans. But I think something really interesting that Sunquil Wooten here posed earlier in the comment section, so we're just revisiting this now. He said, does Smith move to safety and eventually replace Eddie Jackson? Because Eddie Jackson's contract is coming up here in the next year or two. So I think that's an interesting thought to kind of keep in mind. But again, I'll add to Juice's point, right? You want to have athletes in your defensive secondary. And if you have guys that can play both positions, that's great. And if he can find a spot on the field, that's even better. To Juice's point as well, holy hell, how many years we've seen the Bears get down to no names that we're like, who? At the cornerback position, because they just get so beat up. So maybe we do see Smith because of some injuries this year. I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility. If he's, maybe developed a little faster than like a Tyreek Stevenson, maybe Stevenson's a candidate that could go to like a safety position. I don't know. I just think, again, it gives you versatility. It gives you options. And like you said, Juice, you can never have enough speed in the secondary.
I think we as fans love to throw out the idea of a corner moving to safety. And if Smith has played safety before, like I think I might have heard, then maybe that's a possibility. But if he hasn't, I mean, you just don't see it at the NFL level. Safety is such an instinctive position where the footwork, it needs to be years in the making. Like there's so much that fine detail at the safety position that is just different enough from cornerback to be fatal. It's not super different, but it's like these details are so important at the safety position and at corner that it's just really hard for these guys to just swap spots like that.
Yeah. Agreed 100%. Everybody gets very excited over the idea of, just move him to a different position, but it's not that easy. I promise you. Even moving a tackle from left to right is not that easy. Like it's a completely different set of footwork. It's a completely different set of things. You get some guys that can do it, truthfully, like Kyle Long. I think Kyle Long was a perfect example that in the offensive line is a guy who was just enough of an athlete where he could play inside at guard and be a Pro Bowler, and then you can move him outside to right tackle, and he was a Pro Bowler, and then he went back to guard and was Pro Bowler, right? That's not every player, though. So definitely agree with you there, Q. That's certainly something that people need to keep in mind. But the Bears did not have a 6th round pick, as we all knew coming into this one. So they led off the 7th round. They chose another defensive tackle, though. This time it was the Kennesaw State product by the name of Travis Bell, probably a guy that most of us don't know a whole lot about. Only stands 6 feet tall, but weighs in at 310 pounds. Q, what do you have for us on Bell? Again, understanding it's probably going to be limited at this point in the draft.
First player ever drafted at Kennesaw State, supposedly. I think I saw that somewhere. About 300 pounds, uber athlete, like very athletic player. Idea is probably he is a Project 3 tech, and that's about the extent I actually know of him, other than the fact that apparently he is Ryan Poles' favorite person on earth. According to the interview after the pick, it was like when Travis Bell came to the facility, Ryan Poles just did not want him to leave.
That's wild. That is so wild. I hope there's more story on that behind that, because I
know that there's something about Travis Bell, I believe, had to work a full-time job through college and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of stuff that, and don't quote me on that. I heard that secondhand on Twitter somewhere, but it's stuff like that. I think he's a very put in his dues to get here kind of guy.
Yeah, and I feel like Ryan Poles being kind of a guy like that himself in his front office career, right? Going from a camp invite with the Bears to not making the roster to, going back and coaching at the collegiate level for a year before entering the Chiefs, and then just kind of working his way up and paying his dues to get where he is as well. I'm sure that has something to do with it. Juice, any thoughts here on the Travis Bell pick?
Yeah, he's going to be the greatest of all time. I've watched every game of this kid since he was in 5th grade. The Tom Brady of the defensive line position. I'm going to tell you right now, like when you look at this kid, like he's going to have 29 other teams going, what the hell did I just do? I let him fall to the Bears. Now, greatest pick in the history of the Bears. And I'm all in. I bought his jersey last night. We were on the phone back and forth when I bought it. And yeah, it was great. It was unbelievable. What a great pick. Ryan Poles for president.
I love the amount of sarcasm. Jeez, I appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, I mean, again, when you get to the 7th round, how often do you see 7th round guys actually work out? I think in recent memory for the Bears, a guy that really did work out as a 7th round pick was Charles Leno Jr. Played a lot of years at the left tackle position for the Bears, was a very serviceable player. Still,
Ron, you bite your tongue and say that was all sarcasm. I've watched every game since 3rd grade that this kid's played. And I'll tell you what, man, like this kid is a star in the making. Absolute star. I'm trying to get him to be our on-tap friend here. I'm going to tell you right now, there's already an invite, an olive branch being extended by me because, yeah, I did. I for some reason found his Pop Warner tape. It was in my closet. It was crazy. I was like, how did everybody in the NFL miss this guy but me? And then I sent it over to Ryan Poles. I said, you need this guy. And then he left with, being his favorite prospect that he evaluated. So, I mean, you can thank me for the 7th rounder here.
Juice holding it down. I mean, again, I don't hate the pick. Certainly, the biggest knock on him was they don't think he's a 2-gap guy. But if you could put him in,
they're wrong, Ron. They're really wrong. He's all the gap guy. Like, you should see him. He makes the tackle, and he also does hot dogs in 133. I'll tell you that. This is the type of guy that after he'll rake up the field when he's done. And then he'll drive all of his teammates home to and from the bar. Great clubhouse guy. All for it.
I've got nothing else, said Travis. So finally, the Bears made one final pick in the draft. It was DB from Stanford. This was a compensatory pick, and it was Kendall Williamson out of Stanford. Q, any thoughts on this guy, if any at all?
His name has got 5 syllables in it. That's about the extent of what I can tell you. He went to Stanford. That's all I got for you.
I mean, in fairness, it's to the point where the NFL.com doesn't even have a prospect grade for him. So, Juice, Did you also find his Pop Warner tape?
I'll tell you what, Ron. No, I did not. But what a great college that he went to. Probably really smart. Probably a future Bear for the rest of his life. They're going to give him like a solid 30-year contract, I think. I think at the end of this, we'll look back and we'll go, wow, 7th round for the Bears was where we found the Super Bowl winning picks right here. And it all started with a little tape in my closet over here that I sent over to Ryan Poles and said, you need these 2 guys. I'll tell you that right now.
Hey, you never know. Sometimes gems are found late in the draft, as I Am Skokes here says, was Roy Robertson Harris a 7th or UDFA? He was actually a UDFA. So, but a good point. Just because you don't get drafted, I mean, time and time again, we saw it last year with Brock Purdy being Mr. Irrelevant and being a meaningful contributor to the 49ers. Just because nobody might talk about these guys pre-draft, it doesn't mean they're not going to make some noise post-draft. So certainly, again, just names to keep an eye on. And there are undrafted rookies being signed all around the league. We're not going to touch on that today, but that'll probably be the topic, or at least one of the topics for our next episode as well. So keep an eye out for what the Bears are doing in the undrafted free agent market. Gentlemen, I have a quick thought, and then I want to turn it over to you guys here for any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show. Alap's correct. And he says the Bears had a type in this draft, and I might want to correct him and say in both drafts, high RAS score, high just freak athletes. They want athletic players. We saw that last year with the draft class as well. Poles sticks to his guns and does it again in year 2. And I am very stoked to see where these guys start to settle in once training camp rolls around. But gentlemen, floor is yours. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the NFL draft recap?
Just one note I got here on Roschon Johnson. He was a core special teamer at Texas too. So that's going to help his case here. But no, I mean, that's all I've got. I think I have spoken as much as I humanly can about the draft this weekend. So I think I'm done.
Hey man, and you absolutely crushed it. The both of you did. Big applause to you guys. Jumping on Friday and cue all the work that you put in pre this thing as well. Bravo. You guys worked your tails off. And with that note, just quickly, Bears on Tap will not be back this coming week. We'll be back the following week because I think we all need a well-needed week off of just breathing and before we dive back into Bears football. Juice, any final thoughts for us today, buddy?
No, I think you look at the needs that went into this draft and they addressed them. Now it's just about, where do these players end up? What level of skill? How good were the 2nd and the 3rd round picks, on the defensive line? There's some intriguing, secondary stuff that's going on here. And at the end of the day, I think if you lump the offseason all together, because I think we can't DJ Moore and, Justin Fields he got a lot of stuff back in terms of helping his growth, helping his future. I think there'll be a lot of there'll be a lot of talk about how they traded out of this pick, that number 1 pick, and back and got, a right tackle of the future and a really good number 1 wide receiver for them. And then on the defense, it's coaching up. You brought in Eberflus, a guy who knows how to teach defense, knows how to run a scheme, fit these guys in, coach them up. And this is the other thing too, guys. Like, the Bears lost a lot of 1-score games last year, and they're not far away from taking that next step to being competitive in each game, winning some games, and the division is wide open. So my final thoughts is they did a lot to address the holes on this team, and now, it's all about coaching up, and it goes right back onto the coaching staff. You helped with the process. Now it's about making these guys, stars when when a bunch of teams passed on all these guys. So get them into the room, get them into the building, start integrating them into your system. And hopefully next year we can look up and go, yeah, they grand slam with this, because that 2nd and 3rd round, I think, is when we look back at this draft, we're going to look on, it's going to dictate how quickly they can turn this thing around.
Yeah. Great points from the two of you guys. I think they'll settle this thing down. I'll just quickly add to the end of it, just as my little name tag says here on the live. We're closer to football. That's just another checkbox in the off-season agenda that gets us closer to Bears football. And like you guys said, I think this could really be a draft class where we see, very limited draft class last year, truthfully, just in terms of the assets that Poles had. And you saw 3 meaningful contributors come out of that class with, Velus, maybe being the only high pick that they really didn't hit on. More picks. I think there's certainly opportunity for them to hit on some of these guys to be at least meaningful contributors. Not everybody's going to be a star, but everybody has a role, and that's the beauty of football. It's such a team sport that if these guys all fill roles that need to be filled on this team, it could really do a lot for the Bears going forward. Gentlemen, something cute real quick? No? Okay.
No.
Just want to make sure. I don't want to cut anybody off. But before we get out of here, I do want to remind everybody once again, Bears on Tap is one of 2 Bears podcasts here for the On Tap Sports Network. Be sure to check out our friends over at Bears Nation Pod. They do a great job covering the Bears as well. They will be, I believe, recording tomorrow night or tomorrow during the day. So be on the lookout for their show as well and getting their thoughts on the draft too. Be sure to follow them at Bears Nation Pod. Be sure to follow us at Bears on Tap on Twitter. Make sure you follow Q, the greatest follow on Twitter, at least in Bears Twitter, in my opinion, at ButtGetStats. Be sure to follow our buddy at Juice on Tap. I am at Loose on Tap. And be sure to follow along all off season as well. We'll come up with some good fun stuff to talk about here as the off season progresses. You guys know the drill. We got both baseball teams covered as well as the Blackhawks and the Bulls. So be sure to check us all out over at On Tap Sports on social media, www.ontapsports.com on the interwebs. The On Tap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. Again, big shout out for all the hard work here at Bears on Tap over the course of the draft. We'll take a well-needed week off. We'll be back with you guys the week preceding Mother's Day. And with that in mind, gentlemen, bear down.
Bear down.
Fuck the Packers.